The following presentation is made possible by a grant from the Southwood County Historical Corporation, 543rd Street South, Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin.
Paul Gross here. Welcome to the continuing documentary series, A History of Wisconsin Rapids. In speaking of the 20th century, Walter Cronkite once observed that following World War II, most major events would be referred to as before the war and after the war. With that in mind, I've chosen the title of this film to be After the War, Part 1. As in previous films, I'll take you to many of today's familiar locations and dissolve back in time to the way we were not that many years ago. So here we are. It's 1998 and our camera is located on East Grand Avenue, exactly where I stood with my 16mm Bell & Howell movie camera 52 years ago this very day, July 4th, 1946. This was the force that followed the war, and this was the parade that said thank you to the hundreds of area men and women who served in the armed forces that crushed the Axis war machines of Nazi Germany, Italy, and Japan. Victory was sweet, and so was the homecoming, for now we could get on with our lives. Newspaper headlines read, "Rosie abandons her rivets to raise babies," an obvious reference to Rosie the Riveter, symbol of women that replaced men in our factories during the war. At the time, only one bridge joined the east and west side of the river, the beautiful old Grand Avenue Bridge. At the same time, just following the Great War, this area on the south side of West Grand Avenue was still referred to as the Nash Block. The Nash brothers once owned a large hardware store at this location. In 1946, the previously remodeled building was home to the Montgomery Ward store. A portion of the second floor was the original location of radio station WFHR. At the time, the Wisconsin Rapids Daily Tribune was located in a small building on First Avenue just behind the Montgomery Ward store. The newspaper and the radio station were both owned and operated by William F. Huffman. The radio station was affiliated with the Mutual Broadcasting System. Also after the war, on the southwest corner of First Avenue and Johnson Street, stood the old commercial hotel. The building had seen better days, and there was some interest in restoring the structure. But when all efforts failed, the building and land were sold to the Huffman family. In 1958, the hotel was demolished, and the present Daily Tribune building was built on the site. The radio station, now broadcasting in both AM and FM, occupied the round portion of the first floor. In the early 80s, the Huffman family sold the entire operation, the newspaper to Thompson Newspapers, the radio station to the Janesville Gazette. Going back to our location on First and Grand Avenues, we return this time to a 1965 view which shows that Emmons Office Supply now occupied what had been the old Tribune building. Just to the left of Emmons, buildings that were previously home to Normington Cleaners and the Wisconsin Valley Creamery were now occupied by a beauty shop and a gift shop, and an enlarged Normington's now occupied the Creamery building. As our camera swings to the right, this is how the south side of West Grand Avenue appeared in 1965, when the beautiful Wisconsin Theater was the centerpiece of the area. The theater was actually an L-shaped building, and here on 2nd Avenue we see the stage end of the 900-seat auditorium. Now, starting at the corner was the Empire Lounge, Household Finance, Arts Restaurant, Karen's Confectionery, the Wisconsin Theater, the Mecca Tavern, a tiny jewelry shop, the Quick Lunch Restaurant, Badger Paint Store, and Church's Drug Store. Beyond Church's in the next block was the First National Bank, Wilcox Ready to Wear, Daily Music and Appliance, and a Standard Oil gas station. Returning to the 1st and Grand Avenue intersection, our camera is facing north and the C.P.I. office building. Construction of this building started in the fall of 1980, and the building was ready for occupancy early in 1982. The area shown here was once called the River Block, and this is how the River Block appeared in the late 40s and early 50s. Just to the right of the building is 1st Avenue North, a street that was abandoned when the C.P.I. office building was constructed. The first building on the corner was the Heilman store, which mostly featured ladies ready-to-wear. The next one was German's Jewelry, a shoe store, Fay Photo Shop, a gift and luggage store, and an auto supply. And on the west end of the building was a branch of the old T.B. Scott Library. In the next block, the still familiar Mead-Witter building was home to many successful businesses. Among the best remembered were Fritz and Pete's Pool Hall, Wilpolt's Restaurant, Hafner the Barber, Rapids Bakery at Western Union, Frank Abel's Men's Shop, Whitrock's Drugs, Livingston's, Demro's Gift Shop, Newton's, and F.W. Woolworth. There was a man who became a national hero of sorts during the war because of his company's ability to fabricate ships and weapons in record time. His name was Henry J. Kaiser. After the war, riding on his reputation, he teamed up with a man named Frasier to build Kaiser and Frasier automobiles and a smaller vehicle called the Henry J. At the time, competition wasn't very tough, and it would not be until 1950 that the auto industry finally caught up with demand. In fact, this was the daring new 1946 Studebaker, followed by the 1946 Desoto. Both Studebaker and Desoto have long since gone out of business. Now a whole new product was entering the marketplace. It was the dawn of television. In 1950, there were 3.8 million TVs in service, representing 9% of all households in the United States, and the number was growing rapidly. Locally, a few of us strained to receive a picture from the nearest stations in Milwaukee and Minneapolis. Local reception was dubbed terrible vision by most folks. Finally, in December of 1953, Green Bay Channel 2 went on the air and local television sales took off. These are some of the ads for the new TV wonders that appeared in the Daily Tribune. Ironically, of all these 1953 dealers, only Staub Electric is still in business, and they no longer sell TVs. At the time, TV advertising was very basic, and going back to our aforementioned Kaiser-Frasier, this is how they presented their 1951 models to the TV audience.
And there is your car, the 1951 Kaiser. Yes, the Kaiser offers you the most wonderful future because it has the most wonderful features, new features that will stay new for years to come. No other car gives you features like Kaiser's years ahead visibility. Kaiser gives you the greatest window area of any six-passenger car. Huge windows that give you control tower visibility. This tremendous windshield, for instance, is 1/3 larger than the average windshield. And here's another years ahead feature, this safety padded instrument panel. Yes, inside and out, feature for feature, the 51 Kaiser is the newest thing on wheels. The long, low look of the anatomic silhouette, the lightning power of the new supersonic engine, the rugged endurance of the exclusive anatomic frame construction make the Kaiser the car with the world's finest features and the world's finest future.
The company eventually failed and moved to South America, where they continued to build cars for a time.
So stop in at your Kaiser-Frasier dealer.
Later in the 50s, TV started to grow up. The Bulova Watch Company was proud sponsor of a #1 weekly program, The Jackie Gleason Show.
I hope you've seen my new show. It's on every Saturday night with the finest dancing and the most beautiful girls on television. We're also featuring the greatest watches in the world on our show, too. They're all created by Bulova, and they're really something. So tune in, won't you?
Right, Jackie. And friends, here's a preview of one Bulova watch you'll be seeing on the Jackie Gleason Show. It's the handsome new Bulova President, the watch with the executive look. New miracle of thin watch design, handsome classic numerals, distinctive modern dial. Shock resistant with the famous Bulova Lifetime Unbreakable Mainspring. And priced incredibly low. From only $49.50, easy credit too, as little as $1 down, buys the Bulova President.
Oh, it's a dandy. See it right away at this store.
In spite of our fascination with the movies and TV, they had little or no impact on the local sports scene. The year was 1965, and this is a night view of the Hotel Dixon Brig. The Brig was a pleasant downstairs cocktail lounge and restaurant in the Dixon Hotel, located on the northeast corner of 4th and West Grand Avenues. The Dixon Brig had an excellent atmosphere and a reputation for good food and drink. The Brig also had its own basketball team, the Brig Bombers, managed by the Brig owner, a guy named Spider Bohem. On February 23, 1956, the Brig Bombers challenged the world champion Minnesota Lakers, now the Los Angeles Lakers, to a basketball game at the Lincoln Fieldhouse. Here the Bombers are wearing the light tops, the Lakers the dark. The numbers add up to a final score of Lakers 80, Bombers 70. Obviously, the Bombers bombed. The following year, 1957, Chrysler introduced cars with fins, and the styling immediately caught on with the public and the rest of the industry. This rakish hardtop was the 1958 Plymouth Fury, with push-button shift, torsion bar suspension, and of course, a V8 engine. It was also in 1957 when Bernard Ziegler was head of the local Chamber of Commerce and the very first Ridiculous Days was introduced. I recall how Johnson Hills found old dresses in the attic, as it were, and sold them for 35 cents each. At the time, Johnson Hills was truly a department store, featuring everything from groceries and meats to furniture and appliances, and even a restaurant. In fact, at one time, they even sold farm machinery. This first ridiculous days was indeed the best one, when merchants were concentrated in the downtown area and truly used the event to clear out their white elephants. Even the boss got involved. Here, Chester Bell, in bib overalls with a corncob pipe, joins in the fun. Retail business was more relaxed in the 50s. Walmart and Kmart type stores had not yet appeared on the horizon, and very few retailers were opened on Sunday. Here, Johnson Hill employee Ed Brado interviews a customer in front of the store. Employees were more like family in the 50s, and now and then had time for a little hijinks, as we see here. Emil Beck, Johnson Hill's tailor, plays the mandolin, while some of the female employees put on an act. Emil's tailor shop was located on the balcony, and here Ed Brado of the men's department sends some trousers up to the balcony by air, where Emil did the alternations. The balcony was also the location of the Johnson Hill restaurant, which featured real home cooking. As we see here, it was a great gathering place for employees in the early morning before the store opened for business at 9 a.m. And now we move one block south from the Johnson Hill location to the intersection of 3rd Avenue and Johnson Street. We are facing southwest as we go back in time. The year was 1965, when a much different scene was recorded by our camera. The large building on the left of the screen was home to the Marling Lumber Company. At the time, several residences were also located in the area, one of which included a barber shop. The first storefront coming into view was the location of Coleman's Radio Repair Shop. A bakery occupied the corner building, and just behind the bakery on Johnson Street was a tire repair and recapping business. As we do an about face, our camera facing north again takes us back. This 1965 view shows a corner gas station. Just behind the gas station in this view was the Sears store, which was actually located in the former Palace Theater building. At the time, the theater marquee was still in place. As the camera pans right, a local grocery store known as King Henry's Trading Post and the Square Bar come into view. And now let's return to West Grand Avenue, where we are located at the 4th Avenue intersection, once again facing southwest. This time we go back to the summer of 1973 when a gas station dominated the area. It was a time when few could have imagined that gas would one day sell for more than $1 a gallon. Just to the right of the gas station was the City Hall. This location remained virtually unchanged until in 1980 when everything in the area was demolished to make room for a new Rapids Mall. Further to the right of the City Hall was the old Sioux Line passenger depot. A sign on the north end of the building reads Wisconsin Rapids, but on the south end of the depot, a Grand Rapids sign, cut in stone, identifies our community, an obvious remnant of a period when railroads dominated local passenger travel. Perhaps you've noticed that at the time Grand Avenue was straight and did not curve north as it does today. There were still more buildings further along this downtown area of West Grand Avenue in 1973. The first building on the left was Red's Dixie Bar. Next was a surplus store, followed by a bar and restaurant. Next was the location of Doc Weller's jewelry store. At this point, Grand Avenue turns further west and was positioned just as it is today. This view shows Miller TV, another bar, and the Kellogg Lumber Company on the left, while on the right side of the picture, the present Metcalf Lumber Building comes into view. From there we return to the intersection of West Grand and 4th Avenues. Facing northeast in this 1998 view, the brick building shown here is the Walloch Office Supply Building, which has remained virtually unchanged over the years. As we pan left to the City Hall parking lot, we take you back to a time when the Dixon Hotel stood on this property. In this May 1977 photo, demolition of the hotel was already in progress. Moving in closer, a sign on the building still identifies the location of the previously mentioned Brig Restaurant and Cocktail Lounge. In this view, the brown building, which was located behind the Dixon, is still often referred to as the Betke Building, where Betke Chevrolet had been located for many years. Now, facing northwest, we go back to the year 1973. Blenker's TV occupied the corner building, which for many years had been the location of Gottschalk's Grocery. Next was the Guarantee Hardware store, which folks always claimed carried anything you needed and more. Following the hardware store was a tavern, and the next building was home to the Wisconsin Rapids Gas Company. Just to the left of the gas company building and slightly behind it out of sight was the Northwestern Passenger Depot. The brick building shown here was the Bandeline Hotel, which was more of a boarding house. Next to the hotel was Romanski's Bar, and a building further to the left was the Brown Derby Lounge, which for a time featured live entertainment. 300 or 400 feet to the left of the Brown Derby was the location of the Milwaukee Road Depot, shown here in July of 1973, when demolition of the building was already in progress. This was a location that once played host to numerous daily trains and their passengers. This photo was taken on November 30th, 1969 by Bill O'Gara on the Sunday of Thanksgiving weekend as passengers waited for the 2:30 train that would take them to New Lisbon, where they would board one of the mainline Hiawatha's for destinations in Milwaukee, Chicago, and Minneapolis. One of these early giant Hiawatha steam locomotives is depicted in this Russ Porter painting as it thunders along the Mississippi. These trains were among the fastest in the nation and routinely exceeded speeds of over 100 miles an hour. It was on October 7th of 1970 when the final train left the local station, marking the end of all passenger rail service in central Wisconsin. By the fall of 1977, most of what we've seen from 4th Avenue and west had been demolished. In the area of Gutchalk's Grocery and the Guarantee Hardware buildings, a new city hall was taking shape, while just across the street, where the Sioux Line Depot and other buildings once stood, some of the foundations were already in place for the new Rapids Mall. This was to be one of the first true malls in the area, and for a time attracted an unusual number of customers from Stevens Point and Wausau. So, while all of this was going on following the Great War, Consolidated Papers was making great strides in the paper industry. One of the first big projects following the war was the construction of the Peton Well Dam, which would create a fine recreational area and help to ensure future power needs for the company. But perhaps the most significant project for Consolidated Papers began in 1967 with the construction of the new Kraft Mill. At the time of this major undertaking, few could have imagined the tremendous growth that was to follow and carry a dominant Consolidated Papers into the 21st century. So that's the way it was following World War II and right up to our not-too-distant past. There's much more to be said, much more to be seen, but we'll save those stories for next time, when we'll be dealing with the east side of the river. I'm Paul Gross. Thanks for listening.
Having seen this program, would you like to invest in your heritage? For just $5 a year, you're invited to become a member of the Southwood County Historical Corporation. Your contribution assures continuing research and preservation of our past. When was the last time you invested in your heritage? Why not do it today with just one easy call to 423-1580? Better yet, stop in for a visit and discover our award-winning exhibits and massive collection of what you never knew about your community and the central Wisconsin area.